On October 16, 1962, inside the White House, President John F. Kennedy was handed a folder marked Top Secret. The photographs inside had been taken only hours earlier. High above the Caribbean Sea, an American U-2 spy plane had quietly flown over the island of Cuba. The mission seemed routine. The Cold War had made surveillance flights a regular part of intelligence gathering. But when analysts began examining the images, something immediately caught their attention. Long rectangular shapes stretching across open fields, rows of construction equipment, concrete launch pads, support vehicles. At first glance, they could have been construction sites, but experienced intelligence officers recognized the pattern instantly. These weren't buildings, they weren't farms, they were nuclear missile launch sites, and they were being built by the Soviet Union. Even more alarming, these missiles were capable of carrying nuclear warheads powerful enough to destroy entire American cities: Washington, New York, Chicago. And the distance from Cuba to Florida was only about 90 miles. If these missiles became operational, they could strike the United States in just minutes. For the first time in history, nuclear weapons were being placed directly on America's doorstep. And suddenly, the world had entered one of the most dangerous moments of the Cold War. Within hours of seeing the photographs, President Kennedy gathered a small group of his most trusted advisors inside the White House. The meeting was held in complete secrecy. No reporters, no public announcements. Not even many government officials knew what was happening. The group became known as ExComm, the Executive Committee of the National Security Council. Inside the room were military generals, intelligence officers, and political advisors. Each of them understood the gravity of the situation. If the United States attacked Cuba directly, the Soviet Union might respond with nuclear weapons. But if America did nothing, those missiles could soon be ready to launch. Every option seemed dangerous. Airstrikes could destroy the missile bases, but they might miss some. An invasion could remove the threat entirely, but it could also trigger a full-scale war between the two superpowers. And that war would almost certainly involve nuclear weapons. For the men in that room, the pressure was enormous, because the decisions made over the next few days could determine the fate of millions of people around the world. Just 90 miles from the coast of Florida, the Soviet Union was secretly building nuclear missile bases in Cuba. The construction was happening quickly. Large launch pads were being assembled. Missile transport trucks moved equipment through rural roads. Soviet soldiers worked day and night. These weren't ordinary weapons. Each missile had the power to destroy an entire city. If launched, they could reach Washington, D.C. in less than 15 minutes. For Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev, the decision made strategic sense. The United States already had nuclear missiles positioned close to the Soviet Union, in Turkey, in Italy. So placing missiles in Cuba would create balance. But inside the White House, the move was seen as a direct threat, and pressure on President Kennedy was increasing. Military leaders demanded action. Many believed a strike on Cuba was inevitable. The world was slowly moving toward a confrontation between two nuclear superpowers. After days of tense discussions, President Kennedy made a bold decision. Instead of launching an immediate airstrike, the United States would impose a naval quarantine around Cuba. American warships began moving into position across the Atlantic Ocean. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines. Their mission was clear: stop Soviet ships from delivering more nuclear weapons. Every vessel approaching Cuba would be intercepted, inspected, and if necessary, turned away. But the situation was extremely dangerous. If a Soviet ship refused to stop, the US Navy might be forced to fire warning shots, and one shot could ignite a global nuclear war. Across the world, millions of people watched the crisis unfold on television, and for the first time, humanity truly feared the possibility of nuclear destruction. On October 27th, the crisis reached its most dangerous moment. An American U-2 spy plane flying over Cuba was suddenly shot down by Soviet forces. The pilot was killed instantly. Inside the White House, military commanders demanded retaliation. The United States military was already at DEFCON 2, one level below full nuclear war. Strategic bombers waited on runways. Missile silos were prepared for launch. Submarines armed with nuclear weapons moved silently beneath the oceans. Across the world, people feared the worst. Families prepared emergency supplies. Schools practiced nuclear drills. For 13 terrifying days, the world stood on the edge of nuclear catastrophe. And one wrong decision could have ended civilization as we know it. Then, a message arrived from Moscow. Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev proposed a deal. The Soviet Union would remove its nuclear missiles from Cuba. In return, the United States would promise not to invade the island. Privately, another agreement was made. America would remove its nuclear missiles from Turkey. The compromise remained secret for years, but it worked. Soviet ships turned back. Missile bases in Cuba were dismantled, and slowly, the world stepped away from the brink of nuclear war. For 13 days, humanity had come closer to destruction than ever before, and the lesson was clear. Sometimes, peace depends on the decisions made by just a few people in a single room.